Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of council for 7:02 p.m. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. I'm looking for before I look for approval of the agenda, I'd like to request that a motion to amend the agenda be removing item 8.2, Development Variance Application for 537 Gurunank Lane. I hope I got that right. Sorry, say it again for me. Gurunank, thank you. The applicant has requested to be withdrawn to accommodate more consultation with the neighbors affected by the application. So with that one change, may I look for a motion for approval? Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. The minutes that were included of the, sorry, I'm just looking for the date. Special meeting of council from January 22nd that are include the release of the in-camera motion, include the details of the mover and the seconder and those that are opposed. And I believe this is incorrect based on previous advice that council has received in regards to release of in-camera motions. We have had specific legal advice in the past which advised us that both that in-camera agendas were not FOIable and that the release of an in-camera motion would strictly be limited to the wording of the motion and not to the movers and the outcome.
So, Councillor Day, I'm just going to interrupt because I did see your correspondence and I did see the correspondence from staff as well. Would this not be better to discuss during the adoption of the minutes versus the adoption of the agenda?
My message is that the item that is on the agenda should not be on the agenda, so I thought it should be taken off until such time as we had received confirmation of how that should be handled.
Okay, thank you. I'll look to staff. Staff, do you want to comment now?
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I think what Councillor Day is referencing is if somebody requests copies of in-camera minutes through an FOI request, the mover, the seconder, and the disposition is all that's released. The motion is not. But this is not responding to an FOI request. Rather, it is taking a motion from a set of in-camera minutes to a public meeting. And if we don't disclose the disposition, the public wouldn't know whether it was carried or defeated. Does that clarify?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, no, it does not, because we had specific advice on this issue, and the advice that I and this council received was that the mover and the seconder were not released, only the substance of the motion and that the motion had been carried. So I'm simply trying to follow the advice that council has received in the past, and I'm recommending that those minutes not be adopted until we have clarification on how they should be presented.
Okay. So, looking to the will of the council. Would council like to strike 5.2, or would they like it to be added on? I'm assuming, Councillor Day, you're saying you would like to strike it.
I am making a motion that we remove 5.2 from the agenda tonight until we've had an opportunity to get advice.
May I have a seconder, please? We do. I was asking for it to be struck, and we're still on approval of the agenda. Looking for a seconder? Okay, thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. So help me, are both on the same or just one, or how does, we're doing two separate motions. Okay, so we have 5.2 being struck from the adoption of the minutes presently first. Any other discussion regarding the adoption of the minutes? Councillor Parkinson.
I think my only point is that if Councillor Day is correct in what she's saying, the cow's out of the barn or whatever the analogy is. I mean, all this stuff is now perfectly public and accessible. I understand her point. I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I think we got time to figure that out. I just think we're sending minutes so that the information that's already vastly public isn't publicer is probably unnecessary.
Thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you.
Actually, sorry, just before you do, since you've spoken on it, I just want to make sure there's nobody who hasn't spoken on this motion yet. No? Okay, Councillor Day.
So my only point is that my understanding from the conferences that I've attended is that as soon as you recognize that you've made an error, you should make an attempt to fix it. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that we shouldn't carry on as if nothing has happened. I'm suggesting that we should not carry forward once it's been identified that we may have inadvertently made an error.
I will look, actually, I have one question for our corporate officer. So we're hearing contradictory statements. If this was struck from 5.2, is there any report or anything that you could bring back so that this council would be more educated the next time? Because I'm not sure how we resolve this issue if you're saying black and Councillor Day saying white.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Absolutely, staff can seek a legal opinion if that's council's wish, and I can report back on the results of that to you in an in-camera meeting.
Okay. We still have the motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Kobayashi.
So, this isn't the first time we've had a in-camera motion that's been released. How have we been doing this over the past year? It's a valid question right now. Because, we're sitting here as new people, and I'm trying to learn all the rules here. And to me, I'm uncertain. Like I said, black and white, that's what I'm hearing. And I tend to caution on the side of being prudent. So, if you could answer that question.
With the onset of the new year and some updates to our meeting management software, we've been utilizing the software more effectively. So you will notice some changes in your minutes, and that was one of the changes. So historically, the city has not recorded the movers or seconders or whether or not it was carried or defeated in the minutes for an item released from in-camera. For all other resolutions, they do. So it is a change in the practice.
Councillor Baxter.
I don't think whether it's a change in practice or not is relevant to whether it is correct or not. And I think we want to be correct, and I don't think there's any loss to anybody other than we won't be able to carry on this fruitless discussion if we actually strike it and reconsider it next week or 2 weeks from now.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on 5.2. All those in favor? Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, it is to remove 5.2. Thank you. So I will call the question one more time as for clarification. All those in favor of pulling 5.2? 3, 4. Myself as well. All those in favor? Or excuse me, all those opposed? Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Logan, Councillor Jensen opposed. And it carries. So going back to pulling 8.2, may I have a motion removing 8.2? Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. All the seconder? Second. Thank you. Councillor Day, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Holy cow. It's the longest approval of the agenda. Public participation. Is there public going to participate today? Okay, I just wanted to check before I read this. Sorry, I have to read something, but I wasn't going to read it if nobody was going to participate. Members of the public will be provided an opportunity to present concerns or ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to a matter that has been the subject of a public hearing are prohibited where the bylaws related to the matter have not been presented to council for consideration or adoption. There is a maximum of 20 minutes allocated for public participation. Topics should be addressed briefly to allow other speakers an opportunity to address council. So just keeping that in mind, we do have one development on Souk and VMP that has already gone through public participation, so this council cannot receive any new information regarding that project. Any speakers?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Lines, and I live at 3148 Lynnlark Place. My comments this evening are regarding the report that's in the agenda regarding the public hearing. It's we didn't have, or I didn't have a chance to make any rebuttal statement to this report when it was when the bylaw 1734 was passed at a previous meeting.
Sorry to interrupt, but just so that council can be clear, are you referring to 5.4 or 5.5?
I believe it is 9.1 actually.
9.1.
Or pardon me, no, just a minute. 5.5. Yes, sorry, Mayor.
You're referring to 5.5.
Yes.
Okay, just so everybody understands.
Just to characterize, as a member of the public who was at the meeting, our concerns seem to be a little more than what was characterized in this report. And it was just myself as a citizen of Colwood would hope that when people come forward to council to raise their concerns and ask council to perhaps make a more strenuous investigation in a parking report or something like that, that we were heard. So that was all I wish to bring to the attention this evening, was that the characterization of the opposition to that particular development seems to be a little weak. Thank you again for your time. One other thing I would like to speak on. I understand that members of our Aboriginal community are going to be presenting a letter and some information to the council, mayor and council. As a member of Colwood, as a person who's struggled over the years with peer pressure, struggled not to be a racist, not to be someone who was intolerant, I'm very heartened to see that council is going to be hearing a presentation from our Native community, and I hope that everybody here takes to heart the reaching out that they're doing. I read the letter, and I'm very, very hopeful that Colwood, the city of Colwood, can develop a stronger and more compassionate relationship with our Aboriginal brothers and sisters. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Desiree Bond, 546 Delora Drive. I'm here as a strong supporter of Cynthia Day, and I actually just wanted to talk to recent events and say that I believe that Councillor Day deserves an independent review. She has 17 years of outstanding service to this community, and I think it's the least the city should do. To refuse her request, or a request like that, lets the city look a little guilty. It kind of sounds as though you're hiding information. And I also think it's ridiculous to even consider a censor hearing. It seems spiteful somehow, and little vindictive. I don't think it puts the city at a good light at all. And the idea of punishing her by preventing her from working on committees like the Youth and Justice and for the disabled, it's, to me, a public relations nightmare. So I'm disappointed with the city, and I don't believe the city's acted in good faith. And to be impartial, Cynthia Day should be granted an independent review. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak tonight. And thanks again for listening to me on January 14th last about the petition, unanimous petition by Wood Park Drive in Colwood. The file number, by the way, is...
Sorry, did you say your name and address?
Sorry, my name is Lenny Hurley, and it's 3116 Wood Park Drive, Colwood. Sorry, Mayor.
No.
So this is in relation to a unanimous petition, as I say. The file number on the Colwood file is 0550-01-PET-21291. So I just said I'd come tonight and speak to the Mayor and the Council and just reiterate a couple of points that we had been talking about and just have a few minutes to speak before a decision is made. And with that being said, once again, thank you for giving me the opportunity last time round. And tonight, based on this file and in reading the file as per the City of Colwood website, in conjunction with my friend and neighbour who is an engineer, who's Bob, who is here tonight, 40 years resident, and also the another neighbour who's Jared Steingard, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but Jared is working with Westbrook Consulting, and he is an engineer also. So basically, without going over the ground that we covered last time round, my reason for being here tonight is to hopefully put across my strong views that, again, fingers crossed that the council, led by Mayor Rob Martin and the rest of the councils, and such a strong council that we have this time round, be it the engineers, and I know last time round I said that it was an excellent council, and I do feel that it's an excellent council because we have probably the best council that we have in many, many years. Not disrespect to the previous councils, but I think the existing council is possibly the strongest we've seen for a long, long time. With the addition of Doug Kobayashi and Michael and Stuart as well, everybody knows who's new to the council. But anyway, I just feel on this particular item itself, it's a unique opportunity, and it's a very good opportunity for us to get something done in a time efficient and using up as little resources as we possibly can and directing staff of the city in other projects. So with that being said, the decision which is up for discussion by the council and the mayor is staff are seeking direction from the council with regard to addressing the petition, and they have two options for Wood Park Drive in Colwood. Option A is that they follow the traffic calming policy, which again, nothing derogatory against council or the staff. It can take quite time-consuming and expensive budgets to get this, to follow the policy, so to speak. Option two, and again, this is what I strongly feel that we should follow option two, with obviously everybody's approval, is that council direct the staff to install the traffic calming measures on Wood Park Drive as a priority without undertaking the steps outlined in the traffic calming policy. So really what I'm hopefully going to, I guess, I don't want to use persuade and I don't want to use the word convince, but hopefully we can all agree based on a unanimous petition and the field work that we've done and the response that we've got and the handouts that we all provided, council and the rest of the parties including some awesome engineers and some very good RCMP representation, can find a way that we can arrive at option 2, thereby saving time for the rest of the city staff and directing them for other projects that we really need them. That's critical. So, like I said, the main thing here is directing the staff so that we get to arrive at option 2. I myself are very strongly convicted by this particular plan for Wood Park Drive. And again, I'll remind everybody about the City of Nanaimo tragedy with Caelan Baglow, who is a work colleague of mine in the Nanaimo area, and he lost his son of 8 years of age biking with his sister just at the end of his driveway to a speeding truck, which is under investigation. So like I say, with the correct planning, I know, Rob Martin, you're the current mayor, and with the correct planning and leading and organising and controlling of the group that we have here, with your lead, I believe that we can get this done. And in saying that accountability and cost and risk and analysis that would form part of option A, which is the study and the street monitors and the evaluation, and this can take time, and time, unfortunately, is not on our side in case we get another Caelan Baglow situation, which was on the City of Nanaimo CTV News. So once again, I know I don't want to overstay because there's other speakers, but I really hope that you guys can support me and stick with the team and hopefully direct the staff to do and arrive at option 2, which is the unanimous decision to move ahead with as a priority with Wood Park Drive speed measures. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to talk, you guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. I think I can speak for council to say that we would love you to come to every public participation and just tell us how wonderful we are all the time. That would be great. Thank you. I was all kidding aside. Is there any other public? Oh, so no, sorry, but you do have a presentation time spot, so you're good that way. So, if there's no other public, then I'm going to move on. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to Mayor's message. There are a couple things I'd just like to announce. Right now, you can become a Colwood volunteer firefighter, gain valuable training and experience while serving your community in a very big way. I think we got a great department, and I would really encourage anyone out in the community who's looking for some way to give back to the community. The volunteer fire department is a great way to do it. Our community is well served by 8 career firefighters and 32 volunteers, and we always need more. Also, I wanted to announce that on Saturday, March 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Legion on Station Road, a down-home kitchen party in support of Sarah Beckett Memorial Playground is happening and being put on by the Rotary Club for their West Shore Lobster Fest 2019. So that is something that's going on. Tickets are available. They're $75 a piece, and that's happening. They're trying to raise up to $250,000 for the Sarah Beckett Memorial Playground. And finally, if you're looking for any other information on other community events that are happening, please visit colwood.ca, and that's a great place. I'll look to council if council has anything that they would like to share before I move on. All right, seeing none. I am looking for the adoption of minutes, so let's go through this. So I am just looking for a motion to adopt 5.1, the regular council meetings of January 14th. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Any discussion, errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Nobody opposed. And then I believe we can go through 5.3 through to 5.6, which are, I'll just read them out very quickly. The Special Emergency Planning Committee minutes of November 20th, 2018, the public hearing minutes of December 4th, 2018, the report of public hearing bylaw number 1734, and the Committee of the Whole minutes of January 7th, 2019. I need a motion to receive all of those.
Adoption, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any questions, errors, omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, yes? Sorry, could you put your mic on?
The November 20th emergency planning meeting was talking about an RCMP Emergency Operations Center. I wonder if Michael, I guess, could give a little idea what that would look like or what's being discussed there.
Sure. Councillor Baxter?
I believe that the city was looking for a backup emergency operations center and was able to work with, I believe that was a backup for the whole area, actually. And we're able to work with the Wishaw RCMP to combine that with another function that they're putting in the top of their building. So instead of having to find somewhere else and fit it up, that's all being done as part of the backup operations center and the and it'll provide a backup for other people who are part of that RCMP function as well. Sorry, were you specifically referring to railroads? No, good.
No, I think it talked about the RCMP. So is this like a post-disaster building being constructed and, you know,
No, it's in the upper floor of the existing RCMP building. It's just the way it's fitted out. I actually know very little about what the RCMP is trying to achieve there, but they are including our backup emergency operations center.
I'm going to
Mayor, I
actually
might
look
be able to
at
help.
staff because I'm going to look to our planner because he seems to.
I got it totally wrong.
Well, actually responding as the City of Colwood Deputy Emergency Program Coordinator.
Sorry, the emergency deputy program coordinator has an answer.
So the councillor is correct, is that we are working with the West Shore RCMP to retrofit part of their building. The intention with that is that for larger emergency events that would involve more than one municipality, it would provide a coordinating role, and you may have different municipalities all working out of that space.
All right, Councillor Parkinson, does that answer your question? Excellent. Okay, any other questions, errors, omissions? Yes.
Just a quick question for Councillor Baxter. They talked about the Emergency Operations Center Essentials Training, and you were going to bring it to council, so I was just wondering where that was at because I'd sure like to know about it.
Yeah, we don't have a date for that, but as soon as I have a date, I will communicate with all of council.
All right, Councillor Day?
Sorry, just to add that I have done the Emergency Operations Center training in the past, and I find it's very worthwhile. It's very helpful, and especially if you're called on to participate as acting mayor in the event of, you know, an earthquake or whatever natural disaster might happen. It's really helpful to participate in the training exercises.
All right. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.1, presentations. Tanya Clarmont from the Victoria Native Friendship Center.
About to say my address?
No, you're good. If you'd like to.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I am here. My name is Tanya Clarmont, and I currently work at the Victoria Native Friendship Center as the Director of Management Supports. But also in that role, I act as the lead coordinator for the Victoria Urban Reconciliation Dialogue. And so tonight, I was just hoping to present a little bit about what we've been doing and provide you another invitation to come to our table because we have planned another gathering that is coming up. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge some of the members of our steering committee that chose to be here tonight with us. We have Shirley Alphonse. She's a member of Cowichan Tribes, and she's also connected into the Souk Nation here. And as well, she is the elder supervisor to John Horgan. And also, I would like to introduce Sui. She is our steering member that sits with us from the province. She works with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and many different partnerships that we work on, this committee being one of them. So the Victoria Urban Reconciliation Dialogue is a new initiative that formed just last March. So we haven't even been in existence for a year yet. And what happened is we were having a conversation with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation at the Friendship Center, just getting to know them because the Friendship Center had a new executive director, Ron Rice. And so through that conversation, just casually speaking about reconciliation and how that was starting to play out in the minister's mandate letters in the province and nationally as well. And really everybody wanting to participate in a dialogue about it, but no dialogues happening. And so we just thought we would jump in with all, all the best of intentions. And so the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, the federal government represented by Indigenous Services Canada, the Victoria Native Friendship Center, the Métis Nation of Greater Victoria, and then some selected community members, including elder representation, artist Carrie Newman, and now we do have a youth representative as well. The City of Victoria and the CRD. And we all just got in a room and sat down and tried at our best to digest what is this notion of reconciliation. And not just what does it mean as an anomalous concept, what does it mean for people that live in Victoria and the area of Victoria? CRD. I've only been at the Friendship Center since January. I've been with Friendship Centers for 17 years. I've worked at the national office in Ottawa. I worked at the provincial office here for almost 13 years, and now I'm at the local center. So I've been part of that movement and that experience for a long time, but now that I'm at the local center, I'm learning to learn about municipalities, and in Victoria, that's a little complex because we have the CRD and 13 municipalities and 3 electoral areas, and it's all a lot of new information. And so in that experience and being in that space, realizing that we have to do mutual learning. I have to come and understand what it is your processes are and how it is that you come to decisions about what you'll participate in and where you can spend your time. And so as one of our first efforts, we're just trying to meet with all the municipalities, present who we are, and then just make an open invitation to say that if you want to talk about reconciliation in the Victoria area. And so we chose the words Victoria Urban Reconciliation Dialogue, and all of those words still need to be unpacked as a group together. Victoria is an anomalous concept. If you're part of a municipality, saying the region of or capital region, all of these things have implications that we have to consider. But really to say that we do see that all the municipalities have a role to play. We have many community members, not just Indigenous, all our community members that do travel through all our municipalities for work and school and everything else. So we need to think of ourselves as a unit when we're thinking of how we approach reconciliation. So we did have our first advisory panel gathering in November. So what happened in March is a steering committee formed with representations from the groups that I named, and they have been trying to figure out how we get from the community themselves what it is they want reconciliation to be for Victoria. So we held our first gathering last November. 40 participants came from about 35 different agencies representing educational institutes, the school district, police, health agencies, service providers, and community members. And so what we learned at that gathering is we need to gather a lot more. So we're having a second gathering of the advisory panel. It's going to be on February 25th. You would have received an invitation maybe just yesterday as we secured all of the information, but I do have a printed copy here that I can provide and leave with you. And we just would like to offer the invitation to join us at that event. And it's addressed to the mayor, but we leave it in your hands, whoever you feel would be the best representative for your city to be at that table. And if it's one of you, if it's 2 of you, however many of you want to be involved at that table, we're opening the door. And we just would like to really extend that olive branch in this new space that we're all trying to explore together and understand.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go to council to see if there's any questions or anything. Councillor Day.
Sorry, I just really appreciate the invitation, and I chair the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, and we've done a bit of work. We've started chipping at the iceberg to identify what communities are doing in regard to reconciliation, and it is a growing movement. So I'm happy to share what we have in a report, because it might elicit a good starting place, maybe.
Absolutely, thank you.
And on behalf of the council and of the city, thank you for coming, and we understand that these are just steps along the path, and we're very much interested in being participants in that path and that journey. So we look forward to continuing down that road with you. So thank you for taking the time to visit with us tonight. And I've already put it on my calendar.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to 7.1 from Drew Shaw regarding the Pacific Football Club regarding a request for a letter of support for a flyby by the Royal Canadian Air Force. The Pacific Football Club is requesting an aircraft flyby from the Royal Canadian Air Force for the opening game in the 2019 at West Hill Stadium. The date has now been confirmed as April 28th, 2019. They are requesting a letter of support. It is not known if the flyover will include Colwood, but Colwood has approved such requests in the past to authorize low fly passes as low as 500 feet, requesting that they not go over the Esquimalt Lagoon Bird Sanctuary, and directing the corporate communications manager to include information about the event on the city's website to increase public awareness. Council's discussion, and please note that council can just receive the correspondence or direct staff to prepare a letter supporting the flyby by the Royal Canadian Air Force. Councillor Baxter. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any other discussion? Or any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.1. Planner. 500 block Byzantine Way. Thank you. An application for a text amendment to the CD13 zone for the 500 block was considered at the January 9th, 2019 Advisory Planning Commission meeting. A recommendation was not made at that time due to a lack of quorum, although comments made by members of the APC were generally supportive. Before I look to staff, I will look to Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Baxter because they are the two council representatives for APC, and if they have any comments regarding 8.1. If not, I will go directly to our planner, Dennis Carlson.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is in regards to a zone referred to as the CD13 zone. It was adopted by council back in 2011. In the last few months, we've had a number of meetings with the owner's representative, and it became apparent that there was a number of zoning errors. And the report that you have before you tonight is essentially to correct those errors. And I can get into the details if you want.
Okay, I will look to council. Does council wish to hear detailed questions or detailed things? Sorry, Parkinson, Jensen, then Day.
Well, I was going to move option A.
Okay, we got, well, and that's great because I need discussion anyways. So Councillor A has been moved, or Councillor A. Councillor, compared to Councillor B and C. Recommendation A has been moved and seconded. Discussion regarding that. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just a question in regards to the cited after planning and design that's contemplated. I noted that the environmental report that was done did not actually include on-site walkthrough of the location. So would it be reasonable to assume that the site adaptive planning process would include some boots on the ground?
Through you, Your Worship, this site will still require an environmental development permit and also a form and character development permit. So as part of those two processes, they will have to go through the environmental assessment. As we also pointed out when we made our report available to the Advisory Planning Commission, part of what will be facilitated by this text amendment to the zone would be to hopefully minimize the amount of blasting on the bench that's on the site. The way it's constructed now with two separate sub-areas, it almost forces that rock outcrop to be blasted. So hopefully we've had discussions with the owner's representative about using site adaptive planning on this site.
Councillor Day, does that answer your question?
Thank you. And just one follow-up question, which is in regards to the riparian areas regulation, where this site has been determined to not be considered a stream because it dries up in the summertime and because it is draining to the south and into a creek that is blocked further down on its way to Albert Head Lagoon. I'm just wondering the impact of it not being designated as a stream, because there are setback requirements for fish-bearing water bodies. Although fish cannot get up to this area right now because of a barrier in Machosen Road, that's not to say that at some point in time in the future that linkage to the ocean couldn't be reestablished. But if we ignore it and don't protect the area, then obviously in the future it wouldn't be advisable.
So through you, Your Worship, this issue has come up in regards to the zoning amendment. There seems to be some conflicting information about the status of that watercourse. What staff's position is if we can't get this resolved, we would select a third party to do an assessment of that watercourse and determine its status.
Thank you, because there have been fish in the creek, even though they can't access the ocean, so therefore no salmon, but there are other habitat values. So thank you for the clarification.
Seeing no other discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.3, Director of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, call for written submissions requiring an inquiry into transportation network services. The deadline, please note, to submit is February 1st, so we do need a decision this evening. Our senior planner, Jill Collinson, is here for us to answer any questions. She sat through 4 hours, I think, a meeting and never got to talk last time, so maybe somebody could ask her a question. The city received a call for written submissions for the Select Standing Committee on Crown Corporations on behalf of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. At the regular meeting of Council held January 14, 2019, Council requested an item to be referred to staff to provide further information and be brought back to a future committee of the whole meeting to allow public feedback. The item was scheduled at the COTW meeting held January 21st, in which no member of the public provided feedback. Staff have prepared a draft letter for consideration, and Council can receive the report or direct staff to submit the draft letter prior to the February 1st, 2019 deadline. What is the will of Council, and does Council have any questions? Councillor Parkinson?
Presumably we could ask them to submit the letter, but with a few changes?
Yeah, you can make recommendations.
Can I go now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So in the letter, there's a few things. Firstly, they seem to, let me see if I can find it here, where they talk about encouraging the use of low-emission vehicles, e.g. electric vehicles, in the taxi ride-hailing service sector. I'm going to suggest that even people such as myself that are bullish on the future of electric vehicles would have to acknowledge that today they're at a premium, quite a premium, and a scarcity. So that, to me, goes against the concept of having ride-hailing and lots of vehicles around to give people rides at a fair price. So I'm going to suggest that we remove that suggestion. The other couple of things were at the end where they're talking about should it be a class.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop you there, Councillor Parkinson, because let's just have that discussion and let's
You
just
bet.
see
Yep.
if this table would like to have that removed. So Councillor Parkinson has made a recommendation that we strike that. I think I'm not going to ask for a motion on every single thing because we can form this letter as we're working, but let's work on that specific subject. Councillor Day, and then Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I just would speak against removing it only because the wording is to encourage it. So it's not making it mandatory. It's a suggestion. And with the availability of new electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, it's certainly not putting it in there as a barrier to an affordable service being able to be provided.
Councillor Baxter? Sorry, could you use your mic?
Yeah, I just need to know exactly where this wording is in the letter.
It's in the letter. On the first page, we have all the bullet points. We have one paragraph, and it's the paragraph following that. Second sentence, ride-hailing services hold great promise in increasing transportation options, but consideration shall also be given to encouraging the use of low-emission vehicles, e.g. electric vehicles, in the taxi ride-hailing service sector.
Thank you. And I'd support Councillor Day's point.
Any other comments from any other councillors? Councillor Parkinson?
I would just suggest that the use of electric and hybrid vehicles is probably going to happen according to market forces and not legislative forces. I mean, you can't find a taxi that's not a hybrid anymore. So I just think that it's regulating something that doesn't need to be regulated.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make a note of that one, and we'll come back to it. So because we'll form out the letter as we go, and we'll see. So your second point, Councillor Parkinson.
My second point, and I'll kind of wrap them together. It's at the end, just above the signature block. As an alternative to requirement for Class 4 licenses, a province-wide industry standard mandated safety training program for ride-hailing service drivers with an existing Class 5 license could be considered. Minimum age could also be investigated as insurance industry standard recommends 25 years plus as a risk management. I may be sort of in conflict on how I feel on this one, but I think we should support the requirement for Class 4 license, but not worry about 25 years if you've got a license and a desire to do it. I would say leave that up to the companies to make sure their drivers are suitably old enough.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that point? All right, seeing none. Is there any other issues? Okay, so we've heard these two concerns from Councillor Parkinson, and unfortunately, Councillor Parkinson, I haven't seen a huge uptake on those two, so I'm not going to actually ask for motions to change the letter because nobody's yelling at me. So I'm not going to make those changes. We do, excuse me, Marcy, do we have a motion already to move the letter? Not yet, okay. Just before we do, sorry, Councillor Day, I'm going to look to our planner. Do you have any comments that you would like to share?
Your Worship, I think you guys have had time to go through the letter, and I can respond to Stuart if he
Please.
wishes. You are correct about the EEV being a market-based thing, and that this is already something that's practiced in the taxi industry. As a summary of why this is here, as you know, legislation is proposed to change for this fall. So there's been a standing committee struck, and this is kind of one of the first steps of the standing committee. So this letter, which will be due at the end of this week to be submitted to the province, will form part of information to be provided publicly in a report at the end of March. So this is part one of much more to come in the future.
Councillor Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't read every word here, reminded myself every word, but if the planner can help me out first, go
May I
ahead.
stop you just for a moment? My apologies. Councillor Day, you had the table first, and then Councillor Jensen.
No problem. I was going to move the recommendation, so if Councillor Jensen wants to speak before that, I would yield the floor.
How about I second and then I'll have a comment? So it seems that the provincial government is headed down a path where they're going to create some kind of made in British Columbia solution. I just want to know if this letter of support from us, because quite frankly, I think the free market should prevail, and I think that private operators should have every opportunity to engage in this as well as a made in BC option as well. So does the letter reflect that? Like, my concern is that we have as many options available for our constituents here in our community, including servicing our those with special needs, as we've discussed in the past. Does this letter reflect that?
Through your worship, the letter was kind of looked at about 6 different key points, and you pretty much touched on each one of them. So I think the letter does reflect that. This is meant to be the first information coming back from Colwood to the province. It is a voluntary submission. They've just asked if we would like to respond, so we have the option to do so or to not. And I'm sure moving forward in the future, as this is part of drafted legislation, that there'll be further comment and fine-tuning as we find out what the regulatory approach will be.
Excellent. If there's no other discussion, I'm going to call the question. Councillor Baxter?
I just have to say that I think we abandoned the free market a long, long time ago. We subsidized the cost of the fuel to the point of several $billion a year. We have standards on the quality of fuel to avoid adulterated fuel. We regulate the taxi industry heavily to make sure that it's safe for both for us and for them. I don't think we practice free market, and I don't think we should.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson opposed. 8.4, Director of Engineering, request for direction. Pun on words there. Traffic calming petition. During public participation at the regular meeting of Council held January 14, 2019, a resident submitted a neighborhood petition on traffic calming on Wood Park Drive. Staff have indicated, as per Council's endorsed policy, that there are 5 locations requested in 2018 by residents in the 2019 traffic calming program as potential traffic calming sites. Wood Park Drive is currently scheduled 5th. Staff is seeking direction from Council to address the petition. Discussion. Unless I will look, Councillor Kobayashi, then Baxter, and then Logan.
Through your worship, just a quick question, Nikki. What's the cost impact? Like there's a time impact and there's a cost associated with that, right? Doing it through our normal way. And then what's the cost of just doing what they want to do like now?
Through your worship, if we did it cost-wise outside of the policy, it would depend on what the final design was, so I can't actually answer that because part and parcel of going through the policy would be that we would investigate what would be the most effective traffic calming measure and then check for palatability. If it's something as simple as some speed humps, I would have to know how many would have to be installed to be effective, and I don't have that in front of me right now. I don't have the design. Though, having said that, the policy also indicates that we would put up temporary traffic calming. That's already been purchased, so there's no additional cost to the city to do a temporary measure. But that's insofar as our policy. The reason that we would do temporary measures is to measure their effectiveness before we actually installed permanent measures. So the risk, I guess, would be that we install something permanent. It either doesn't do what it is meant to do, or creates moves traffic to another location. At this location, that would be rather unlikely.
Thank you.
I'm just before I go to Councillor Beck, just to follow up through the Director of Engineering. I guess I interpreted the question a little differently, and you got the right answer, so you were happy with it. But allow me to ask the way I interpreted it was, it's not necessarily the costs that we're concerned about. It's about that we only have a certain amount of labor that we have that can do these traffic calming studies, and that we have a list of priority from 1 to 5, and they're 5th on that list. And so that if we were to begin to do work at this project, it would mean basically that we would have to push another project down versus working at tandem. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
To your worship, we currently have already embarked upon 2 other locations according to the policy. So at the moment, we already have speed reader devices that have been installed in 2 other locations. The residents have all had leaflet drops. They know why the machines are there and what they're there for. They know that they're on the list and that we've already embarked in their neighborhoods, and those are at 2 locations.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
I think the point here is that the 2 options are asking us to choose between continuing to act in accordance with the traffic calming policy, which means that those that requested first are investigated first, and then the outcome of the investigations determine what the action is. Whereas the second option would see us dump the first 4 applicants and go straight to Wood Park without ever having heard from the other applicants, which seems intrinsically unfair. So really, the second option, I think, would involve asking all the other applicants to come and see how much butter they could ladle all over us, and how much they could compliment us and be approved first. Again, not a very fair process. So I think the 2 options we should consider is the first option, and as a possible second option, given the cost and time taken in this process, that we start a review of the traffic calming policy to see if we want a different process.
All right, thank you. Councillor Logan, then Jensen, then Day.
Thank you, Worship. I'm of the same opinion as Councillor Baxter. It's we've got a policy, and I absolutely appreciate the concerns that are experienced in Wood Park. I don't think there's any disagreement about that whatsoever at this table. But Councillor Baxter is right. We can't allow one neighborhood to jump the queue over another. It does set up some uncomfortable dynamics amongst different neighborhoods, and I think, I want to make sure that we study a situation and present the right solution. Speed humps may not necessarily be the right solution in the neighborhood. There might be other alternatives, but I think we need to get the proper data that quantifies and validates some of the information that's been presented here. And clearly there are 4 other areas that are following the process, and staff are currently gathering the data to determine what measures need to be taken in those neighborhoods. So I think we really do need to respect the policies and respect the other 4 requests that are already in the queue percolating. So, and that's not to say we're not going to address the issues on Lynnlark, Wood Park, but you know, they need to get in line as well and respect the process that the other communities are working under as well.
Thank you. Councillor Jensen? No? Councillor Day?
Thank you. I guess my question in reviewing the request is whether or not we are comfortable with our process, because we've adopted the traffic calming process going, our policy going forward, and it hasn't been 100% successful in our first application, which was looking at Esquimalt Lagoon and the roads in that area, who've come for many years seeking policy. And I applaud staff for identifying a policy and coming up with a way to try to treat everybody fairly, but I'm not sure if we're 100% satisfied with the results, because in effect we're almost doing a counter petition every time that we have a request for traffic calming, and we're also going quite far down the road in terms of really identifying what that traffic calming would look like, where it's possible, and it's becoming quite a long and arduous process to get any traffic calming. Not that it wasn't always long and arduous. Where we do have traffic humps, it has taken many years of lobbying by residents to get those traffic calming measures put in place. But in light of the discussion that I'm hearing about wanting to have everybody evaluated on an even playing field, I'm just asking the question, is the policy that we have the right policy, or is there maybe something that should be built into it where we're not doing that counter petition process where 100% of the residents have already signed a petition? It sort of almost seems a backwards process.
Councillor Jensen?
Well, I concur with Councillor Logan's assessment, which is why I chose not to speak, but my concern is this. I could advocate for all sorts of traffic calming on my street. It's pertinent to my street, and that's great. But what I haven't heard is, what do the folks on Tanya Place and Cedar Crest have to say, which immediately joins Wood Park. So it's those kind of assessments that I look for from staff, once they've leafleted, canvassed, got feedback, and spoken to the entire neighborhood. So although I do think there is a process, it's there for a reason, and I think we should respect that to some degree. Although I do commend the Wood Park folks for coming forward and doing so in such a prepared fashion, because my experience is we don't typically see this level of organization, so I take note of that.
Any other discussion? Councillor Kobayashi?
Just through the mayor, just one last question, Nikki. So the priorities are done on first come, first serve, or do you do sort of a criteria? Do you assess it and say one area is this may be a little more critical, so we're going to prioritize it this way or this way or this way? So that's my question.
Through your worship, yes, we do a preliminary investigation. So the very preliminary things are, is it near a park? Have we got a number of concerns that have been raised, not necessarily asking for traffic calming, but have there been accidents in the general vicinity? Several of the locations have had multiple people asking for consideration in the same area, for example. So one of the locations that got rated highly out of all of the 5 was had the park consideration, and that definitely does move that one higher than others. Another one is at a location where we have had 2 accidents that I'm aware of in the last 2 years. So we do take consideration of many factors prior to. We also have to vet them to make sure that they're actually eligible for traffic calming per the policy, and that gets done as well.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, then I will need a motion.
Move the first option.
Sorry, there's no discussion. Sorry. Thank you. Option A, or option 1, has been moved. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion regarding this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, you oppose?
I'm opposed.
Okay, thank you. Doug, did you oppose, or were you? No, you were early. You agree. Okay, thank you. So it's only Councillor Day opposing. 8.5. Proposed text amendment to land use bylaw, recommendation for first and second meeting. As per the recommendation of the Advisory Planning Commission from their October 9th, 2018 meeting, staff have prepared the appropriate land use amendments to amend the definitions of flanking street and front lot line to require setbacks from the Strata Road, including pet daycare in the community commercial C2 zone, and include a provision for small car spaces. And that this is only for information, correct? Correct, staff? This is only for information, and that this is coming before us under bylaws. So is there any discussion? Yep, Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just a question on the inclusion of pet daycare in the community commercial C2 zone. Just would like to know, I recall issues around noise being a concern, and I'd just like to hear comments from the planner.
So, through you, Your Worship, yes, Councillor Day, I believe, was raised this issue when this came before council initially. That is something that's not, as far as I'm aware, included in this bylaw. It would simply be handled through our bylaw enforcement if there was noise issues with adjacent properties. I stand to be corrected, Councillor Day, but I believe if I recall, your issue at the time was within the building. Is that correct? Right. And I don't believe there's any way that the city can enforce any noise between tenants. That would be something the building manager or owner would be responsible for.
May follow up, just to understand, section 7.2 is adding pet daycare provided that animals are not kept overnight and they're kept entirely within an enclosed building. But if you've been in an apartment building where there's a barking dog in an apartment, that can cause noise problems. So if it's considered a permitted use and there's a dog barking, is that addressable under our bylaw?
Through your worship, if it's determined that there is a noise from a barking dog and it's impacting adjacent properties, then we would ask our bylaw enforcement officer to take the appropriate actions.
All right, seeing no other questions, I'm going to so we're going to, that council should consider first and second reading of bylaw 1754 under the bylaw section of the agenda. So we're going to go to that right now. So under 9.1, bylaw number 1747, final reading. I need a move in our
final.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bylaw 1754, first and second reading only.
Move introduction.
Moved by Councillor Logan. Second by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second. Oh, yes, sorry. Yep. Sorry.
Just before you move off of this item, I do believe that the staff were asking for a public hearing to be scheduled as well under 8.5. if council is
Oh, I'm
willing to
sorry.
proceed with the bylaw. You could include it after your second reading resolution. I just didn't want you to lose it.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to suspend the second reading because we haven't got a mover and seconder yet. So you would like me to come back up, and do you need a motion for us to go to public hearing? You do. For 8.5? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to 9.2, bylaw number 1754, looking second reading.
Move second reading.
Thank you. Move Councillor Baxter.
Second.
Second, Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that we move in camera, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan. Second by Councillor, Jensen. He's competing. Sorry, Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.